Today we are talking libero and we're going to build a libero tactic. We're going to play a game. We're going to kind of talk about the new kind of variant of a libero. It's changed over numerous years since even the early days of maybe more of a sweeper in the 50s and 60s. But then as the 70s developed with Beckenbauer, people like Baresi, Koeman have all had their kind of influence on the name, the libero, and the positional kind of structure, what they do in possession, what they kind of do out of possession as well. And then after that, a kind of silence of a libero for 30 years to the point where then Pep Guardiola brought it back in a very different structure. We've seen it actually a couple of times in the Club World Cup with Real Madrid and Tchouaméni. And we've also seen it with Simone Inzaghi's Al Hilal. He used Ruben Neves in a couple of games where he was dropping in to make libero. So we're going to try and do the 2025 new libero version. So the first variation of the libero / sweeper was under the use of managers sort of like Cal Rapan, Helena Herrera. They played with sometimes sweepers. Now Cal Rapan in particular, he just basically brought a midfielder out and put it behind the three defenders. It wasn't instead of a defender. It wasn't a replacement, it was an add to. So this was known as Cal Rapan as a Veru. Covered it in last week's video in the history of tactics in Football Manager. Basically, we were looking at just having an extra body in there. Wasn't needed to be that technical at times. It was literally, it's a Veru, I mean door bolt or door chain or something like that, giving you an extra layer of protection. And then it kind of developed, under Helena Herrera. It went to a 3 and he was given with a little bit more of a task of playing out from the back, but not necessarily really stepping in. We didn't really see that stepping in and that beautiful playmaking until the 70s when we saw Franz Beckenbauer. Rinus Michels had it at times in his teams as well with a variation of it. And then it kind of then grew more. If you talking about the 3 at the back, we're talking Italy, 3 at the back. And it was more of a sweeper rather than a libero. Like they could play, like Franco Baresi did this at times. But in terms of stepping in, Ronald Koeman did it to a certain extent. But he was very much a ball playing, kind of like a halfback, deep lying playmaker rather than this player that carries. Now, fast forward to 2025, and what we actually have been seeing is if teams set up with this kind of back 3, Xabi Alonso has had big problems in build-up and trying to get all the moving parts and issues that many managers have had at Real Madrid in terms of building a structure. And he has struggled to kind of find a balance. Now, what we do know from the Club World Cup, that he likes to build with a back 3, that's for sure. But at times it's not necessarily needed. They've played Arda Güler in there, who's been very isolated, because we know Valverde, Bellingham in particular, will like to get forward. So what they have been doing, and what Al Hilal did, and what Simone Inzaghi did with Al Hilal and Ruben Neves, was to bring a midfielder in. So that's what we're going to look at today, is like the new variant of it, where we're maybe looking at a defensive midfielder who can play a little bit, has the physicality. So, in particular, the game against Juventus in the Club World Cup, Tchouaméni started in the middle as the middle libero. Had a little bit of an issue in marking Kolo Muani. They got in early doors, and that was because of maybe he's not used to playing that last line of defender. They also had an issue in here where Rudiger was struggling to get close to that. What's that Turkish player called? Yildiz, and he was getting into these areas here. So what they did do was flip it around, where Rudiger went inside, he dealt with Kolo Muani, and then Tchouaméni was allowed to come into here as this sort of like wide libero, which is really unusual. The Al Hilal one was just out of possession. In possession, he would step forward, Ruben Neves, and dictate from deep. Soon as the team lost possession, they would drop in and make a 5-4-1. Just like that, and Ruben Neves would sit in there, and then in possession he would move up, the wide players would come inside, and the fullbacks, the wing-backs were allowed to push on. So that's what we're going to try and look at today. We're going to do it in 2 variations, and we're going to play a game. I've done a tactic, by the way, with Real Madrid. It looks a little bit like that, and we'll go through it, and we're actually going to do a little change at halftime as well. We're going to play a nice little game against Mallorca. We'll do it in extended highlights, maybe even comprehensive highlights, to see how we get on, see how the tactic works. We'll kind of go through a couple of the player instructions, why, and then we'll see how it looks in the match engine. All the tactics will be available for the Patreons. All the tactics for the rest of the videos of the week will already be there for you as well when this video drops, if you've got early access, so go check them out. Muchly appreciate if you'd like to go support the channel. Don't worry though, at the end of the video, we will go all through the player and team instructions. There may even be tweaks, variations mid-game that we make based on what we see. So it's a really good way of seeing how the tactic works. So my initial thought was, let's just do Tchouaméni as a libero on support so that he steps into there at times and helps Arda Güler. That has been a little bit of an issue, that when they're in maybe a mid block or in high possession and they lose it, Arda Güler can get exposed. He's been a wide player, he's been a 10, playing in a midfield 3. He's now been kind of thrust upon the ability of basically being Toni Kroos and Modric in kind of one go, because they haven't got anyone who can progress the ball that well in midfield. So Arda Güler's been tasked with that job of dropping off. Problem with that is he's not physically great. So what they've been trying to do is have, at times, Tchouaméni playing as a back 3, so they can build with that back 3, and then have, as the play develops, Tchouaméni stepping in a little bit more to kind of support Arda Güler. So if there's a counter-attack, they can kind of cut it out a little bit, rather than having big gaping holes, then running at the back 3. I think at half-time, we'll have a little swap around. We may do a little bit of fun with the man marking. So if I just copy the tactic, halfway through the game against Juventus, they went to this, where he was then tasked with finding Yildiz and kind of stopping him there. So we'll have a little go and see how that works. I've kind of got it offset as well. So when Tchouaméni does go in there, I noticed a couple of games that we've played so far, they were just, at times, just kind of stood on top of each other. So I've just brought Arda Güler off. We know Bellingham's going to do that. Valverde's going to do that. And then we're going to use the two. This is the only thing that the wing, he wants to, he's got big problems as Xabi Alonso. He has got the signing of Fernandes, former Man United player, Benfica player. That will help on that left-hand side. We know that Trent can do a job at wing-back, but he's not going to be able to travel. So we've got a couple of team instructions to kind of make it a nicely well-balanced tactic. All right, let's go into the game. I'll just quickly show you that we've had a decent start to the season, which you'd expect. The tactic works, basically. So I'd love to hear your ideas down in the comments of any players that you could think of that would be really good at dropping. And I think they, even at times like Andrea Pirlo stepped in really deep. That was more in possession. So I'm thinking like anyone could drop in and be a libero in possession. It's, that's that halfback, that register, that real classy player. But they need to be defensively solid. Ruben Neves is a decent physicality where we know Tchouaméni is. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, where Rodri could do it. Yeah, let me know if you're thinking of any of these hybrid back 3, back 4s that we're likely to see, or back 5, should we say, out of possession. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who could be what we're going to call the modern day libero. I didn't want to go into the thing of the back 4 libero. It's been covered loads of times on videos. I've done a whole host of libero Manchester City videos with John Stones stepping in. So we thought we would go and try and do a classic libero, but with the idea that it's that real central midfielder kind of footballer that is, still good physicality to have the energy to get into these areas and really press and squeeze, especially when we go on to the second one, because we might have him man marking maybe a number 10 or something like that. Right, so first half, we're going to line up with him in the middle, which is, my only worry is that if we start getting him to man mark 10s, stuff like that, he's then going to come out of position a little bit too much, potentially. Mbappe has nicked it early on. So now, look, this is the little bit of an issue that we've got, because Güler's a playmaker. They get sucked towards the ball. So we're a little bit on top of each other there. But he's got himself back in nicely. There's a nice little highlight to show you. As soon as possession's lost, he does immediately get back in to make that 5. Now, it's not perfect, because I think in those scenarios, we were a little bit covered. If we just bring it back again. So loss of possession, look. I suppose he's kind of tracking that run, but he's so desperate to get back in to be a centre-half. I don't think that was necessarily needed. I think what you do really want from your libero is, can he stay and work in there with Güler? And then as possession is more settled and the block is more settled, maybe a mid to low block, you then get in and make a sort of like a 5-3-2. What we're trying to recreate here with Real Madrid, Vinny, Mbappe, Bellingham, Güler and Valverde as the 3. But, FM matched engine stuff is still really, not really, that's the wrong word. It's really difficult at times to break absolute every little minute detail down. Right, so very important. We want a build with a back three. And we're still getting that with Tchouaméni. I like the little swap over we had there as well with Gula. At times, Tchouaméni may go forward, and it may just allow Gula then to step in. Gula's been known to step into the left half space. Sorry, the left sort of like the left centre back, as we look like we can maybe get a penalty. He likes to drop in and create a back three with Arda Gula sometimes dropping in and making like being a back three with the two fullbacks pushing on and having two centre halves and doing it that way. So there's a little option. I didn't want to put Gula as a half back because I thought that would then make us potentially have a back four. We may have a little play with it for maybe 20 minutes towards the end, just see what the positioning is like when we use Gula in a different role. Because that's where we kind of want him. I'm happy with that. We have lost possession, look. So he sits back in. I said he goes in maybe a little bit too early for me. For me, he could maybe be in here. But that's the match engine. I think what you're going to need from your libero, they're going to do a lot. They're going to cover more ground, aren't they? Because they're constantly, especially how FM sees it, with in possession moving forward after an early build-up. And then straight back in. You know, there's a lot of legs there. Look, he's moving at speed. I think Vinny's off there. Moving at speed to then get forwards and get back in. But we're trying to build that little bit of a partnership in that kind of double pivot. So I do think this is how Real Madrid will actually line up at times now. Out of possession, real problems with, you know, Mbappe and Vinny did it to their credit. They weren't being lazy. I think the days of Mbappe and Vinny being allowed to do whatever they want have gone. But then you kind of understand, you know, same as players like Sancho, Garnacho. Sorry, I'm thinking Man United. There's a lot of players that try, but just not that great at it. And I think, you know, Mbappe and Vinny are definitely two of those. So there he is, nicely dropping in to be a sweeper, which we want. See here, look, here. I think that's more of an issue with Gula more than anything else. I just wonder if we could just change Gula just for the moment. Because with him being a deep line playmaker, he's actually going to get sucked to the ball. I think a Regista would probably do the same. Let's try. I think we're going to get the same answer with the Regista. See here? I'd rather have Gula or Tchouaméni. This is where that's tactic that we're going to use potentially in the second half may work because he's kind of just clogging up his room a little bit there. That's nice. He's got on the gosh, it's a lovely goal. It's a lovely goal. Played as the DLP. Let's just bring it back. So here, look, they're on top of each other. Really, I would love Tchouaméni to be here, I think, and still build with a three. He's just gone a little bit early. He's kind of there. But then Gula, even though he's playing on the left side, it's a lovely flowing move. Tchouaméni's involved, look, in the attacking phase there. Good rest defence. I think, if anything, I think Larin, Marucci, playing with a front two. I might even get my two, because I hate to see that. Marucci's playing deeper, so we'll leave that. But I think Larin's going to be the highest man. I might get Huijsen to man-mark Larin, I think. We get a little bit lucky with the goal. Because ideally, you know, if there's a counter-attack here, the ball's cleared, they're going to have the opportunity to get the ball down. Centre-halves don't like going in there unless they're kind of man-marking. So let's get Huijsen just marking Larin and see if we can get him going straight in. I'll tell you what, we're going to change this to a half-back. Just for now. And see what we get with the movement of, I think it may be a little bit deep, but we'll try that half-back for Gula. Because the idea is that he drops deep and he's able to thread passes through the midfield. We've got a few instructions on a couple of players, in particular Valverde. He's playing as that box-to-box, but we need to give Trent some support down that right-hand side. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments to get this. You know, it is all based, I know we're basing looking a lot of it around around Arda Gula, but it's very important that when we're building a tactic, you know, we're building a libero tactic, everything else needs to fit around it. And what we're getting is that similar movement with Gula and Tchouaméni that we kind of need to change and adapt. So it's not always the case of changing the libero's instructions. It'll be changing things around the libero to try and get the best out of him. Now, if you're playing a Ruben Neves in there as well, lovely on the ball like Al Hilal did, you want him to have a little bit of space. You don't want it clogging up. So that's better. He's not getting sucked towards the ball. You wouldn't expect that from a half-back. It's not a playmaking role, even though, really, dribble less is a disaster, but we want him to take more risks. So that's nice. That's nice. Now, Goulet, if I pause it, look, even though he's kind of gone as a left centre half, which he does do at times, and they'll build up. I think Xabi's going to really look from game to game. If you look at their progress through that Club World Cup, it was constantly changing. It was not so much just problem fixing. It was, well, a mix of this is an issue, so let's try this. So there's our back three. Now let's see what happens to Goulet, because Tchouameni's going to go in there by the looks of it. Oh, that's nice, nice. So they don't seem they're close to each other, but they're not on. No, this is what we wanted. So if there's a loss of possession in here, Tchouameni's in a good position to win the ball back. Still a little bit over keen to get back in to make a back three when it's not really necessary. But look, that's stuff that we can't change in the game. You know what I mean? It's impossible to make these roles absolutely perfect to what you see in real life, because there's so many the mechanics of the game and trying to change things for certain scenarios. But it's a nice little mix. Trying to do different things in FM. You know, you've played FM for best part of nearly 2 years, and just trying little things like this. As I said, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments about this modern day libero. So they need, I think, the pace, the engine, can play a little bit, midfielder. You know, I don't want you telling me modern day centre halves. I want number 6s, number 8s that you think can do a really good job at dropping in. So there we go. We've reached half time. Absolutely dominant. Look, we're playing Mallorca. I'm not trying to show you, you know, if we're getting beat 3-0, then so be it. You know, we can get beat 3-0 playing libero. It's just, as long as the libero wasn't at fault for the goals and, you know, the positions that we're trying to create. So what we are going to do is we're going to move it across, and we're going to play now Tchouameni as the right side. So this is what they did against Juventus. And then we will still play him as a half-back and take more. It's a shame that some of these roles just need to be freed up. There's no reason why you couldn't have a half-back that could dribble. You know what I mean? They could drop it to these areas here into the back three and then drive. Maybe FM26 will get that. Lesser restrictions on some of the roles. So that's what we're going to try and recreate. Militao being sort of like the Rudiger figure. Because he's in the middle, I can't put Stay Wider on, which is a little bit of an issue because, you know, we'll just see how that three there of Goulet, Huijsen and Militao works. But if you enjoy this sort of, I'm starting to do these because I think it's a good way of, you know, rather than just clipping up a load of highlights and kind of just saying to you, look, this is how good it looks, and not really showing sometimes not the bad bits, but the things that you've got to be aware of if you're trying to recreate tactics. Not everything works perfectly. So I think these extended videos of watching the game, watching the changes I make and why I make them. So he's gone in really narrow though, Tchouameni. Really, I want him in this half space. You see? Look where he is now. Okay, so that's a little bit of a problem. I don't know if we're going to be able to solve that. Stay wider. It's all we've got. By the way, spoke about it numerous times. Someone like Mbappe as a trequartista. Oh, works so good. Right, so we've got a throw in. Oh no, it's a goal kick, sorry. So Tchouameni's there. I'm hoping we have a little turnover in possession. So that works fine. I like it how he's engaging a little bit. Look, Trent's going to go and cover. Where's Trent going? Oh no, I thought Trent was going to go and press that left centre half, then he didn't. Oh, we won possession though. We've scored a lovely goal. Is that a nice little dink from Mbappe? Nipped in. Go on then. Yeah, it's nice. Nice goal. It might just have to be for Goulet, you know. Could just be a defensive midfielder on support, because that gives us the opportunity to dribble more, take more risks. And with it not being a playmaker role, he's not then going to get stuck like we had in terms of getting involved and going too close to the ball at times. Right, so that's not bad from Tune. It's a little bit better. We're now not going to be able to build with a back three, but there's Ardagula. Yeah, that's good. They've moved away, so I think Ardagula would, if that was a playmaking role, so that's better. Got a nice little double pivot. Why isn't Huijsen marking him? I'll never know. Oh, changed tactics, that's why. That's why he's not going in, because we changed it at half-time, didn't we? So I would always, if you're playing with a back three, I'd always get one of the centre-halves to, or like they're playing with the front two, but Marucci's playing probably as a target forward on support. So I would have the furthest guy forward, this Larin, look, there. That's where you need Huijsen to be right up his ass. We've dealt with it okay, but we've allowed him there to get control. They've lost it, but allow him to get control of the ball and play backwards. He needs a little bit more pressure on. Been really aggressive, right? That change has now been made with Huijsen. And it's amazing that, even though I've played the game, just watching the game uncomprehensive and really slowing it down, and we've already made, what, 4 or 5 little tweaks. So I will have both tactics available. I think where the game is kind of developing now, I think that the download files for the Patreons will probably have Ardagula, that number 6 role, as probably a DM, but with those instructions, take more risks, dribble more. We just lose that back three build-up. I suppose the early build-up is where you want the back three, and you'll get that, building out from the back from a goal kick. You'll get the back three. That Xabi likes to do. And then he's in these really nice areas then to just move that ball, rotate that ball. I think we'll see the left-back role changed at Real Madrid when Fernandes comes in. A lot better going forward. Now, Fran Garcia is just a very solid kind of left full-back. We've made it 3-0. We're absolutely coasting, by the way. Nice little switch of play. Still not happy even at that position there of Huijsen. Like, it's supposed to be man marking. Like, the man marking system in FM is just crap. It's absolutely crap. See if we can show you a glimpse of that. We want to be in this attacking third. That's where you really want him to be. I find sometimes man marking works when you're defending, but that's obvious. The centre back will need to mark the striker in their final third. It's when we're in possession is the key. So now for me, maybe not now, but here, like Larin's gone really far forward. So really we would like Huijsen not to be here, but maybe here where that light green meets the dark green. Do you see what I mean? So he's not going to get hit behind, but he's in an opportunity to really go in and press and be aggressive. Maybe it's the player role a little bit. We've scored another goal. So maybe the ball-playing defender on stopper. You can't do stopper. We don't want Huijsen being a wide centre-back on attack, because that's kind of the in-possession instructions where they're on the ball and they charge forward. See here, Larin's moved out. It's not bad. It's maybe slightly better. Be interesting if the ball goes into his feet, then do we see that man marking instruction really come to life? Just tracking him there. Tracking him when he thinks he's going to get the ball. Gula can't do it at all in FM, by the way. He's doing a job for us. I think I've still actually got Modric on the bench. I think this will be the way for Real Madrid, been really controlled performances and just allowing, you've got that quality in that final third. Just allow them, not just allow them to go win the game, but make sure defensively they're so solid. They have been quite poor under Ancelotti. I think with no real defence, not defensive structure is the wrong word, but players allowing to be a little bit lazy at times. So I don't know what you think to this second half one. It works. Where would you like to play Libero? I think most people either have played it in a back four as like the John Stones, or naturally just put that without being, doing the stupid stuff of double liberos at centre half and stuff like that. I imagine most people have played liberos in as the middle centre half. It'll then push on Valverde, as we're keen on having Valverde playing as that kind of wide box-to-box midfield kind of role to give Trent some support down that right-hand side. Right, so there's Gula. So there's a double pivot. That's okay. Don't mind that. He's getting into better areas, moving the ball into Tchouaméni, please. That's good. Valverde, Trent's going on a little underlap. It's good football. I love a goal. Ah, Jude, you bell end. I'm going to have to say that structure now is so much better. I think definitely that holding midfielder needs to be not a DLP, but someone who's going to get on the ball and play. Seems to be getting a lot in these areas here in possession. I think that's definitely where the Libero's stepping in. Yes, there's something to be aware of with the playmakers. As much as they're good, they do get sucked, and we'll cover that actually in Wednesday's video with the Rom Deuter of how they do not get involved in build-up. Don't get sucked towards the player like you would expect a playmaking player would, or a playmaking role. Right, there we go. So the two variations, both tactics are available as I said for the patrons. We're going to go through all the player and team instructions now. So a couple of things to be wary of with the tactic that we've said. That very important that with the Libero, we didn't cramp up his space in possession. So that's why initially we had the Gula on that left-hand side. But then from that, we've still realised that deep line playmaker gets involved. So just things to be aware of when you're building a tactic around particular roles. Interestingly as well, because of if we're talking more Real Madrid now at the time, we want more movement from players like Valverde in wide areas, because Trent is, he's not one to run it himself. He's going to need support. We know Fran Garcia's got support with Vinny on this side. So we've got a couple of player instructions as well in amongst the team to kind of help with the overall balance of the team. Right, back three, sweeper, keeper on defend. No player instructions. Wide centre-back on defend for the right centre-back with the Libero. As you can see, we've not changed any of that. Like, if you get a superb creator, like Tchouaméni's not, and maybe Ruben Neves, you could probably go there, take more risks. Good dribble of the ball, perhaps dribble more. We've just left it blank for you today. Huijsen, the left centre-back, we've gone wide centre-back on defend. And then man mark, depending on what side the striker's on, I would have one of those defenders marking, the furthest forward striker. Into Gula, so we've changed that from the DLP. We've gone take more risks and dribble more. And that gives him a real Ada Gula kind of role. The left wing back, on support. Right wing back, on support, complete, and a wing back, just to give us a nice little bit of balance. Valverde, it could be anything. The reason why I've gone box to box, because I want that run. I think a Mazzala floats a little bit too much. We just want that 8 energy from Valverde, and we've done it with the instruction to stay wider. You could even go underlap right, and that would maybe force that run a little bit more. Bellingham, central midfield, on that left half space that he likes, on attack. With Vinny, stay wider to help with that possession there, that little passing. Run from position, because we know that he likes to get involved a little bit, maybe combined. We've seen at times out of possession, it's even looked like a 5-3-2, which is pretty cool. And then Trequartista Mbappe, no player instructions on him. The other version is central defender on cover and the bearer on the wide right. With that one, you could probably go dribble more, because there might be a little bit more room. The two wider centre-backs tend to have a little bit more time on the ball to drive into midfield, so you could definitely have that on. And then the team instructions, same for both. Fairly wide attacking width. That's personal preference, really. I suppose, you're playing against teams with lower blocks, etc., trying to break a team down. I think they play with a back five, did Mallorca, but we didn't have a problem, did we, in the game, so we didn't need to change it. But I always like the harder the game gets, move it down. The easier the game gets, so we're looking to get a goal, open up, break a team down, not creating much. Then we move that up. Play out of defence, obviously. Higher tempo, shorter passing, working to the box with low crosses just because we've got Mbappe, but that's, suited around the team itself. Counter press, counter, distribute centre-backs, take short kicks, and then we're pressing super high, super high, super high, step up more, being really aggressive whenever we can. Don't forget about marking those, play at them man-marking positions as well from the two defenders. One of these two in this tactic. I'd be getting one of these two to mark a central striker. Just be aware, watch the game in comprehensive extended highlights. Watch the game in 2D as well. It does help. My analysis of games has become a lot easier going from the match engine 3D to 2D, just so you can see the whole of the pitch and you can see it clearly without obviously the graphics. The graphics aren't that great anyway, either, so we don't need to bother with. I don't think I'm missing out by playing in 2D. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Give me those suggestions for a modern day libero and let me know down in the comments. We're sorted. Tomorrow we're looking at the Enganche. Wednesday we're looking at the Raumdeuter. Next week we're going to be looking at the inverted wingback, and then give me some suggestions what you'd like to see on the channel as we create tactics around these wonderful roles in Football Manager. Take care.